There's a pile of ice out past Neptune, twice the size of Manhattan, that slid down the wall of a giant crater. And here's the strange part. Nobody on Earth noticed it happen, not for 11 whole years. NASA only found it a few weeks ago, hiding inside old photos nobody had looked at closely enough. And that's not even the weird part. In the very same week, the tiny spaceship that took those photos, silent for almost a year, 6 billion miles from home, finally woke back up and said hello. That hello took almost 9 hours just to reach us. Pluto's been quiet for a decade. Turns out it was never actually done talking. And this is only what NASA's confirmed so far. Quick reminder of what New Horizons actually is, since it's about to come up a lot. NASA launched it back in 2006. It's roughly the size of a grand piano, and its whole job was to fly past Pluto and send back pictures of a world we'd only ever seen as a blurry smudge, even through our best telescopes. In July 2015, it finally got there. Closest flyby, first ever real look at Pluto's surface. Mountains, craters, that giant heart-shaped plane everyone's seen a photo of at some point. That was 11 years ago. New Horizons flew past Pluto once, at incredible speed, and kept going. It never turned around. Nobody's been back since. And yet here we are, in 2026, still finding brand new things in that old data. This video isn't about a new mission to Pluto. It's about two old friends, an 11-year-old photo and a spacecraft that's been quiet for a while, both still having things to say. So here's what actually happened. A team of planetary scientists went back through New Horizons' original photos from that 2015 flyby, the highest resolution shots taken by its long-range camera, and started looking for something specific: landslides. Not because they expected to find any. Pluto's about as far from geologically exciting as you'd assume a giant ice ball, billions of miles from the sun, would be. But they looked anyway, because that's what good scientists do with old data. And they found 6 of them. 3 impact craters, all close to Sputnik Planitia, that giant plane that makes up part of Pluto's famous heart shape. 1 landslide sits inside a crater called Coughlin. 2 more are in a crater called Geeklus. The last 3 are in a crater that doesn't even have a name yet. Now the scale here is worth slowing down on, because these aren't small. Each one dropped somewhere between 1.5 and 2 and a bit kilometers in height, and the debris from some of them traveled up to 9 miles across the crater floor before it stopped. The biggest single landslide covers about 130 square kilometers. For reference, that's roughly twice the size of Manhattan. On Earth, a landslide that size would bury a small city. And you can actually see the evidence in the shape of the terrain itself, the same way geologists spot old landslides here on Earth. Curved scars carved into the crater walls where the ice broke away. Boulder-sized chunks of ice scattered across the debris field below. Long, sloped aprons of material spilled out onto flatter ground. It's the exact same signature as a landslide in the Rockies or the Alps, just happening on a dwarf planet nobody's visited in over a decade. Worth saying clearly, too, this is the first time landslides have ever been confirmed on Pluto specifically. We've seen them before on Mars, on Mercury, on the asteroids Ceres and Vesta, even on Pluto's own moon, Charon. But Pluto itself had never shown one, until somebody looked closely enough at a decade-old photo. Which raises the obvious question: what actually knocked that much ice loose on a world that's supposed to be one of the coldest, quietest places in the solar system? For one of the 6, scientists actually have a decent answer. The landslide inside Coughlin crater sits right next to a smaller, younger crater, basically a fresh dent punched into the rim of the older one. The leading theory is simple. That impact shook the slope loose, the same way an earthquake can trigger a landslide here on Earth. Cause and effect, more or less solved. The other 5, though? Nobody knows. And the researchers are upfront about that in the actual paper. They're not hiding behind vague language, they're just genuinely not sure yet, which is honestly the more interesting position to be in. There are a few real candidates on the table. One is thermal cycling. Pluto's orbit isn't a neat circle. It's stretched out enough that its distance from the sun changes a lot over its 248-year orbit, and for a while it even swings in closer than Neptune. That means surface ices like nitrogen, carbon monoxide, and methane are constantly cycling between frozen solid and turning straight into gas and back again as the temperature slowly shifts. Do that often enough, over a long enough time, and you can imagine a slope quietly weakening until it just lets go. Other possibilities on the table include ordinary tectonic stress, slow erosion, and cryovolcanism, essentially ice volcanoes, something scientists still debate whether Pluto even has active examples of. Here's the part that actually matters more than picking a winner, though. Whatever caused these slides, the way they behaved is unusual. Pluto's gravity is weak, roughly 6% of Earth's, and the debris involved is basically loose, icy rubble with very little friction. That combination let material travel much farther than a similar landslide would on Earth. Scientists studying it have called these some of the most mobile landslides found anywhere in the solar system. So take a step back. Something happened out there, recently enough in geological terms to still be visible, on a world we've spent decades describing as frozen, dead, and essentially finished changing. And it moved a Manhattan-sized chunk of ice far enough that if it happened on Earth, it would be the kind of headline that leads the evening news. That's not a dead world. That's a world that's still doing something. We just weren't paying close enough attention to notice. This isn't actually the first time Pluto's flipped the script on us. Before 2015, most of what we knew about Pluto came from blurry telescope images and a lot of guesswork. The general assumption was that a world that small and that cold, billions of miles from the sun, simply couldn't have much going on. No atmosphere worth mentioning, no weather, no surface activity. Case closed. Then New Horizons actually got there, and none of that held up. It found nitrogen glaciers slowly flowing across the surface. It found mountains made of water ice. It found evidence that parts of Pluto's surface are surprisingly young, geologically speaking, meaning something has been resurfacing it far more recently than anyone expected. Even the possibility of cryovolcanoes came out of that flyby. These landslides are basically round two of the same story. Another sign that Pluto isn't a fossil. It's a world that's still doing something, even if we don't fully understand what yet. And that matters beyond just Pluto. It's the most studied object in the Kuiper Belt, that huge ring of icy leftover material out past Neptune, simply because it's the one we've actually visited. Whatever's true about how active Pluto's surface still is probably tells us something about how active its thousands of smaller, icy neighbors out there might be too. Scientists use Pluto as the reference point for an entire category of worlds we otherwise can't get a close look at. Small aside, since it's genuinely funny, Pluto's basic identity is still being argued about too. NASA's current administrator has publicly said he's in the camp of making Pluto a planet again. So even after landing a spacecraft on its doorstep and mapping its surface in detail, we still can't fully agree on what to even call the thing. Which brings us to the second half of this story. Because we only found these landslides one way, by going back and looking at old photographs more carefully. So what happens when we're no longer limited to old photographs? What happens when the spacecraft that took them starts sending home something brand new? Here's where the second half of this story comes in, and it happened in almost the exact same week as the landslide announcement. On August 7th, 2025, New Horizons went dark. Not broken, not lost, just deliberately shut down into hibernation mode by mission control, powering off almost every system except a basic flight computer. NASA does this on purpose during long stretches of the journey where there's nothing directly ahead to study. It saves power, reduces wear on the hardware, and cuts down on how much it costs to keep tracking a spacecraft that's, at this point, further from the sun than almost anything humans have ever built. This particular nap lasted 321 days, the longest hibernation in the entire mission's history. Then, on June 23, 2026, right on schedule, it woke back up. Flight controllers at Johns Hopkins confirmed it was healthy and fully operational. And here's the number that actually puts the distance in perspective. That confirmation signal, traveling at the speed of light, took 8 hours and 52 minutes just to reach mission control on Earth. New Horizons is currently about 5.9 billion miles away, roughly 64 times farther from the sun than we are. Worth clearing up one thing, because it sounds like the spacecraft was just sitting there doing nothing for almost a year. It wasn't. 3 separate instruments kept quietly recording data the entire time. Measurements of the solar wind, charged particles, and space dust way out at the edge of the solar system. All of that data has been sitting on board, untouched, waiting for someone back on Earth to actually download it. So what's next? In the coming weeks, New Horizons starts studying hydrogen way out at the edge of the heliosphere. That's the giant bubble of the sun's influence that surrounds our entire solar system. Scientists want to better understand something called the termination shock. the point where the solar wind finally runs out of steam against the pressure of actual interstellar space. Cross that boundary, and you're not really in the solar system's territory anymore. The mission's currently funded through 2028 or 2029. If the spacecraft stays healthy past that, and so far it's shown zero signs of slowing down, it could eventually become only the third human-made object ever to reach interstellar space, after Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. So here's where that leaves us. There's an entire year's worth of brand new data sitting on that spacecraft right now that literally nobody on Earth has seen yet. And if a decade-old photograph could still hide something as big as a Manhattan-sized landslide, it's worth wondering what's waiting in the data we haven't even opened. So in the span of about 2 weeks, Pluto managed to remind us of something twice. Once with a landslide hiding in a photo we'd had for 11 years, and once with a spacecraft that went silent for almost a year and came back with a full year of secrets we haven't even looked at yet. We used to think Pluto's story ended in July 2015, the moment New Horizons flew past and kept going. Turns out that was never really the ending. It might not even be the middle. If you want to see what's actually inside that year of new data once NASA starts releasing it, that's exactly the kind of thing I'll be covering here. Subscribe if you don't want to miss it, and I'll see you in the next one.